appointed hour has arrived. Alder Neal was unable to attend or participate today, but we do have Alder Larson, Alder Watson, Alder Killian, and me, Alder Peckham. So we'll call the meeting to order. Ask for any public comment or suggestions. I don't know if there's nobody in the room, nobody online, right?
Nope, I just have one announcement myself to introduce Mark.
Okay, you want to do that now?
Yes, please.
Very good. We have a new staff member, and Ms. Polly is going to introduce him.
Yes, so we have a new recreation superintendent on staff, and Mark Doro is here, and I'm going to put the camera on him so you can see him from home, and he can see you guys on TV. But he's here just to say a few words about himself. This is what, week 3? Starting week 3?
It started March 8th. So
Yeah, so
4.
maybe the 4th week. But Mark is the recreation superintendent. I'm going to be in charge of recreation programs, the pools, so you will see him a lot because his position is mostly funded by the city side of our operations, a little bit by the county. But Mark, do you want to say a few words about yourself?
Yeah. So I grew up in Reedsburg, Wisconsin, and got a bachelor's degree from University of La Crosse in recreation management. And I've spent most of my professional career, 10 years total, most of it in Colorado, running aquatics facilities, aquatics programming, and also adult and youth recreation out in Colorado. 2 years recently back in Wausau that I moved back here to the Wausau area to run the Grand Lodge Aquatics in the indoor water park there. And then now recently on board with the county, Marathon County Park Rec and Forestry. My passions are I like to hunt, exercise. I have a hobby farm that keeps me pretty busy, and just overall getting to know people, and I'm a very social person. So.
Yeah, and he's got a big task of trying to staff the pools right now.
Yes. So right now I've been working on getting the recreation guide out. I'm in my first 3 weeks, which will be coming out in city pages, I think this week. And then also now jumping into the staffing, getting contact with all the return staff, and also pushing to get some new staff on. I was able to bring on some staff from the Grand Lodge, which was nice. And we're going to continue to work on that in the next couple months.
Good. And he's got lots of ideas for some new things going forward, probably next year. And we'll be working on our 100th anniversary celebration towards the end of the summer. So we're going to keep him busy.
All right. Well, it was nice to meet everybody. Hopefully next time we'll be face to face.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Yep, welcome, and good luck. I'm sure you'll do well, and you might have a tough task in staffing up those pools, but we'll get her done.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Very good. First item of business would be the approval of the minutes. They look okay to me. Did anybody have any comments or suggestions? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Oh, I can't see you anymore.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
Mr. Killian, moving to approve the minutes, and Mr.
I'll
Lars.
approve second.
Very good, thank you. Any comments, last chance? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, thank you. We'll go down as 4-0. We don't have anybody here from Seawalk, I guess, but they had a pretty self-explanatory information on the Sylvan Hill Bike Park improvements. Ms. Polly can talk a little more about that.
Yeah, I'm going to bring up the packet so I can share it and we can kind of walk through it. This is fairly brief, so let me grab that real quick. Okay, I'm going to share the screen with you, and then we'll be able to pull that up. Where'd it go? Hold on. Okay. This is right now. Okay.
They always get points for great photos. Thank you, Gary Barden.
Yes. So this is actually something that you have already seen before. So looking at the agenda summary, they came to you back in October with this proposal. It has not changed since the October meeting. But at that time, the motion from the Parks Committee was, I believe, 4-1, yes, that you approved them, or you supported the plan and allowed them to do some fundraising. Then the idea was once they got the fundraising complete, we would bring it back to the Parks Committee for further discussion to see if there was any issues with it moving forward. And then there's a process we have to go through because this is over our limit for the procurement policy. We do have to issue a request for a proposal for it and get the pricing that way. And then we can enter into a contract with them. But we are at the point where CWAC has secured $23,000 in funding, and they have one additional national grant out there that they're hoping comes back positive. But in the quote that they had originally based their plan off of, $23,000 does cover two phases or two parts of that first phase. And the two phases that they would include would be that return trail back up to the top, and then there's an enhanced skill area that they would add. And then the second phase would be the additional items that they had. I believe that I got that right. The return trail and the bigger downhill trail and some maintenance improvements. Some of that would be the boardwalks that our team is going to help with as well. So the proposal is included in your packet, just for a refresher. Like I said, it's the same proposal you saw in October. And like I said, this is the number one. This is the return trail that they would plan to add for easier access to the hill, back up the hill. And then number 4, this additional rock trek downhill actually is the other part of the first phase where this funding would cover, along with some maintenance to existing trails, which includes these boardwalks in here and one here. So bringing this back to the committee for discussion and the ability that they've got the funding, can we go out, do you support us going out for RFP at this time to allow them to do phase 1 of this, I guess, phase 2 of Sylvan Hill improvements, and any questions that you might have.
I was wondering, there's 300 feet of boardwalk, park staff building that boardwalk?
Yes, park staff will plan on building that boardwalk, yes.
Okay. And then the shelter component of it, 50,000 or something like that. Are they planning on fundraising for that, or is that a city?
That's not part of this initial first phase of this second phase of improvements. That is still a future item. So they are going to continue to try to fundraise for it. We just have it on our plan as a future, maybe CIP request. Nothing is committed from the city at this point, and no time frame is committed. So we will work with them to possibly get the funding for it. If they can't get the funding for it, it would be brought to the full council as a CIP request in the future.
Very good. Any questions from committee members?
Mr. Killian has his hand up.
Mr. Kay?
Thank you. Was Alder Peckham referring to that 5,000 to 5,500 figure in the packet related to the boardwalk? Is that not part of this phase? Am I understanding that correctly, Ms. Polly?
No, it would be part of this phase, and we will not move forward with it till they have that funding, but we feel that 23,000 will probably cover that, and they have the option, if it doesn't, to come up with the additional amount so they can get it completed. But that would be part of this initial funding.
But it's anticipated they will likely be able to fundraise that amount or incorporate that 23,000. Is that right?
Yes, from my understanding, I believe so. Yes, that was the last email I got from their president, was that they're working on including that within the fundraising part of it to get it funded as a whole as part of the project. Once we get the RFPs back too, we will know exactly the amount, and if they don't have the full amount, we won't move forward with the project until they do. But right now with the initial quotes they got, the 23,000 would cover these first two pieces.
Yeah, my question had to
Okay,
do
because
with,
I recall that when this had come before us the first time, I may have been that sole no vote simply because I think it was unclear at the time if they could provide a real firm commitment about fundraising the total amount. From what I'm hearing today, it sounds like that there's a high probability they'll be able to. If that's the case, unless I'm misunderstanding, then I would support this. Thank you.
That's correct.
is it correct that if the money isn't there, it's then not happening? I mean, we're going to go as far as the money that they're able to raise allows us to go.
Yes, yes, and they feel they wanted to come forward with these first two pieces because they do, based on their quotes, they feel like they do have enough. If the RFPs come back higher, then they may choose to only do one of these trails. They'll do whatever they have funding for, and then they'll continue to fundraise for the rest. But when we do an RFP, we would just do for these first two items and not the entire project at this point because they don't have the funding for the entire project. So we would do just what the estimated funding covers.
Sounds prudent. Any other questions from the committee? Comments? I guess we don't need to vote on this, right? We just, it's informational? Or would you like a endorsement?
I think I would like a motion that you approve going forward with the RFPs for the first two pieces for what their funding allows, so we can submit them.
Okay, do we have a motion then to go forward and issue an RFP?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Alder Larson. Second? Ms. Watson, thank you very much. I think we've, no more discussion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye here too, 4-0, very good. Discussion and possible action on developing a policy for the lighting of the River Life Bridge. And I think we've had that pretty close to worked out. Ms. Polly?
Yeah, so there's a lot of discussion behind this, but this is also carried over from your last meeting in March. As we had received requests for changing the lighting on the bridge by River Life. Then it was also discussed on, what should the city do and what should we not do? Do we change the lighting? Maybe we don't change the lighting for anything, or maybe we do. So going forward, I was told to look at state and federal holidays and see what those are to start with. And I eliminated all of the Packer and Badger games that were on here to begin with. And then I went through and I included in your packet this grid that shows you the green and yellow highlighted items, and I'll go through those in a second. But then I also included where I got this information from. And I think it's 3 pages that shows all holidays and observances in the United States for this year. You can see there's holidays, there's state holidays for different states, there's observances. And then the other big piece of this was, I guess it's more than 3 pages, I apologize. But then the other part of this was I was really curious to see, Breast Cancer Awareness Month is one we know a lot of in October. But that's just one, like what other items could people come to us and really request? And I was really surprised at the number of events and things that are recognized each month. And sometimes they're just a single day, sometimes they're a week, sometimes they're a month. But this is where I think this whole discussion stemmed from, is that we had requests from one group for the month of April to be changed to blue. But what happens if we have another group that wants something, for Stress Awareness Month, or, any of these items that might be national days or World Health Day, and how do we pick and choose, and how do we prioritize who gets what, and where do we start, where do we stop? So I guess going back to what I was initially kind of tasked with is, as a starting spot, this is the chart that highlighted in yellow and green is our federal holidays and our state holidays as they're observed in the state of Wisconsin. As you can see, we had a number of other holidays on there that aren't necessarily federal holidays or specifically observed in the state. And so that's where the discussion, I guess, should be with the committee is, do we change the bridge lighting for anything? And if so, do we start with this list? And with this, we then can pre-program it in the beginning of the year or even halfway through the year. And change it. We can always add things as the city council would see as specific days they would want to recognize. And then the other question is, do we take requests, and then how do we prioritize those requests? So if you look at these dates, the yellow ones are federal holidays as recognized by the federal government. The green ones are observed in the state of Wisconsin. So I added the two, Susan B. Anthony and Cesar Chavez Day. And Cesar Chavez Day is actually only recognized in part of the state, and it didn't specify which part of the state, but I know when I was in Milwaukee a few weeks ago, there was advertisements for it on TV, so I think in the southern part of the state it is recognized. And then state holiday recognizes Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, where federal is the days. So opening it up, this would, if we went with state and federal holidays, we wouldn't change it for President's Day, we wouldn't change it for Valentine's Day, and all those other ones that are on there, we would not particularly have on the list at this time. So that's where I'm starting from. As a staff recommendation, I think if we want to remain neutral, this is probably the best starting point for our list to start from. If we want to open it up, we need to have, I think, a criteria of what would be the requirements because of the time it does take to change that lighting, that it's not just a simple switch. So I'll leave it up to discussion.
Any comments from the committee on how they handle this? Seems like we're pretty good shape for this year to proceed for the rest of the year with this list, and I guess I don't know, Ms. Polly, have we gotten very many requests?
We have gotten the one for the month of April this year, but in years past we have gotten other requests for different months, like I think we had a request for purple lighting during like the Relay for Life, and we've had a few other ones in the past that haven't come yet through this year, but we get a couple each year, maybe 3 or 4 each year.
Yeah. Committee thoughts? Okay, hearing that.
I guess I'm okay with starting out what you have there, Ms. Polly. I would be real hesitant to be adding much more because if you say it's kind of a pain and time consuming to go down there and take the board out and put it back in, I would be okay with just using this as a starting point.
Is that Alder Larson moving to approve this game plan?
That is, yes.
Very good. Do we have a second on that? Alder Killian, thank you. Any other thoughts or comments? Very good. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Sounds unanimous. Thank you. Discussion and possible action establishing naming rights criteria for parks and park facilities. And I believe the Park Commission, the county side, gave this the green light last week, so.
Correct, and I did make a few changes based on their comments, but they were very minor. So this is also something you reviewed at the last meeting as just an initial kind of stab at a park naming policy. Correct me if I'm wrong, but what I thought that I had heard from both our Parks Commission and our Parks Committee was that we didn't necessarily want a policy in place, but rather, guidelines and criteria that we could use on a case-by-case basis, because every instance could be different. So I took I was told to take, I guess, bits and pieces of different, the couple of examples I gave you at the last month meeting, along with another couple that I found. And I took bits and pieces of it to put together some criteria and guidelines for if this were to come to you again for either the naming of a new park or the naming of a facility. So the park naming guidelines and criteria is for those that would have like the naming of something in perpetuity, long term. The next item that we talk about on the agenda is more of the sponsorship, would be a termed agreement, and I'll go through that in a second. So this is for something that would be basically in perpetuity, that something we are giving to somebody, either a person or establishing a new name for a city facility. I'm hoping to use the same park naming criteria and guidelines for both the Parks Commission and the Parks Committee so that it's pretty consistent along all of our park facilities. Like Mr. Peckham said, we did talk about this at the Parks Commission meeting last week, Tuesday, and they felt that this was a good start on guidelines and criteria that they could use moving forward, so they did make a motion to approve this going forward. I think there are some grammatical items that they had pointed out that I changed, but overall, the content is exactly the same. That should be in their that was in their packets as well. So looking at it, I kind of started, I took about 3 different naming policies that I had. 2 you had seen last month, and a third one I had found in some documents that I had when I was creating the same sort of criteria when I worked in Minnesota. So the first part of it is basically the purpose, and kind of the purpose of it is that we have unique names, names that mean something to our area, and that they're respectful of all people and reflect positively on the values of our community. Donor naming is something that, there's specifics to it down below, but that's to be considered on a case-by-case basis depending upon what's going on with that certain facility, what all the criteria is. So going down into the guidelines, the first set of general guidelines are, what we should look at avoiding for naming. Not duplicating any existing facility, something that's easy to understand, but that also is appropriate, and there's lots of categories there. If we name after companies, that the company has a business that is not solely derived of any of these items that are here that make it appropriate for children. Now that's, going forward, maybe fewest words as possible, just for ease of knowledge for people to understand where it is, to people to say, for us to put on signage. And then names should not be appointed or elected officials that are currently in office. If we want to reuse former name facilities, that it be reused only if there's reconstruction of the same facility, so that not to confuse people. And that the names that we put on should not commercialize any of our facilities. So that's kind of the difference there between a sponsorship versus the naming. We want to make sure that it remains a city facility. Then there are some other items where we could name, historic places and events, recognizable names that locate of where they're located, maybe, like River Life, it's along the river, stuff like that. Featuring of natural areas that it's around, and then kind of the biggest discussion item on here is if it's in honor of individuals, that they must meet all the criteria, having worked in Marathon County or an area that's become the county, be separated from county, this is if they were an employee for at least 1 year, or have been deceased for at least 1 year, had an exceptional tenure, highly esteemed in the community, basically without criminal or legal judgment, to reflect positively on the community. That's where it's very, goes down into this bottom part. If they are living at the time, a significant study is done on that person, because and when we did some sort of agreement, we'd want some sort of information in there about if this person were to fall out of good standings with the community, what the city's options would be. But then if they're also in honor of somebody, that they've had civic service, they've had significant contributions to the city and the county's historical and history and culture, or had significance with the development of a specific area, or made a financial contribution. And like I say at the bottom of this is that meeting the guidelines, even if you've met all of these guidelines for groups, individuals, whatever, doesn't guarantee that naming will be approved. It's still on a case-by-case basis. It would still be up to the city whether they even want to entertain a name, but this would allow for some criteria for you to consider in making those decisions. So,
One of the things that I was kind of paying attention to was who would authorize the naming, and there was a reference early on, and it sounded like all of the authority was going to the department. But on the next page, it indicated that there are criteria, and, like the example that was used at the Park Commission for the county sports complex was that if there's going to be the naming of the entire sports complex, then an elected body, this committee, the council, would get to weigh in on that. But in terms of naming of the individual sports fields, we don't need to mess with that. The department head can make that call. Any other concerns, comments, or anything on this one?
one thing to add to what you just said is I think the intention too of a naming in perpetuity, in my opinion, probably should always come to the city council or the Parks Commission. For the sponsorship one, because it's probably a termed agreement, then that's where the criteria comes in. But if we're naming something that's going to remain that name forever, this is something I think I would bring to the committee for the committee and the council to approve.
Yeah, that sounds good. Anything from the committee?
Will we be taking any action today on these guidelines?
Just to approve, to put them in place.
One question for Ms. Polly. In the section where it, under the guidelines for naming in honor of individuals, groups, or organizations, it talks about, being highly esteemed in the community without criminal or legal judgments. I was just wondering, because we're talking about naming parks, and parks have such an intimate relationship with our environment, in terms of the judgments and legal standing, would it be possible, if this does not cover it already, to incorporate environmental regulatory judgments? Meaning, I think it would be, in this day and age, it's already been done in the past, but in this day and age, if we were to name one of our parks in town after a serial polluter, for instance, I don't think that would be very appropriate. So just based, I guess, on how you feel and how the committee feels, does this already cover that, or is that something we could incorporate? Because that almost seems like a kind of a no-brainer to me. Thank you.
I would think it would have to be legal judgments rather than a body's opinion of something. But so if there are legal judgments against an individual or a company, I think we're covered on that. Think so?
Yeah, I would think so, unless I guess I can run this past our legal department just to see if there's a different type of a judgment that would be specific to environmental issues, or if legal judgment would cover it, but.
Sure, and just as an example, maybe if you're talking to legal, Ms. Polly, on the EPA's facility search online, often when you will search the facility, it gives actually a summary of whether there are any past or open violations in terms of at least federal regulations. So that might be an easy one. If there's something active or in the recent past, that may be a good litmus test.
Okay.
Alder Killian, are you suggesting that we bring this back or that we possibly approve it with the proviso that Ms. Polly check with the city attorney on something like that?
Well, I think if we could incorporate that, that's going to be whatever legally valid language that would include in terms of having active or recent environmental violations. I would feel comfortable in moving ahead with this tonight if the motion could include that language will be incorporated once it's validated by a counsel, legal counsel.
Okay.
Would you like to suggest wording, like for that last bullet point, say without criminal or legal judgments, including violations of environmental law?
That sounds good, Mr. Chair.
That would, I'd be a simple one, I think.
Yes.
Okay, so are you moving to approve this with that wording change?
I am, yes.
Very good. Is there a second for Alder Killian's easily volunteered motion?
I will second it.
Thank you, Alder Larson. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Good. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Very good. Thank you. We're doing well here today. Possible action on the sponsorship policy for parks and parks facilities. I think there's a fair amount of repetition in there, but I got through it. You want to talk about that, Ms. Polly?
Yes, thank you. So the last meeting, I did not have a separate policy for sponsorships. And in going back and knowing that I was going to separate them out and bringing this back to you, I realized I had put this together already at my previous job also in Minnesota, because we were doing the same thing. There we were actually building a multi-million-dollar facility and renovating another one, so we were really relying on sponsorships to help fund something like that. So yeah, it does have a lot of wording in it, but I think that it really, and we can shorten it or do whatever, but I think what we're really trying to do is hit home is that there's a image and a criteria that the city and our department and the county are making sure that we follow, and that is that we keep the trust of the public in mind, and that we stick to our mission and our values and our cores when we're looking for sponsorships, and that we seek sponsors that really mirror what we're trying to do in our community. And I think that is probably our number one goal here. So that's where the policy statement in the beginning, it really does repeat itself, but it hits home in that we are going to make sure that we really keep the public trust as our number one concern, and that we are using sponsorships to better the system, to increase revenue, but to also keep our integrity in check and our goals clear and our mission clear. So with that, that's the first page, and then we have some definitions of sponsorship. Then it really gets to kind of the meat of what I'm presenting as the sponsorship policy. And that we will be using, basically the sponsorship policy will be used to help the department in a number of ways, one being to increase revenue for our facilities, because we do know, budgets sometimes get tight, and having those partners to help fund those facilities or provide some extra revenue does get, it's helpful to us, and it provides maybe even a stronger base having that partnership. Some of it that comes to mind is, on the county side, we do have the sports complex. That specific facility is an enterprise fund, actually on the county side, so it is not meant to be county taxpayer funded. However, when it was built, the county made a commitment that they were going to provide some taxpayer funding to it because it was an important facility to the economic vitality of the community, as well as the health and wellness of the community. But we are still tasked with recuperating 70% of that revenue. And If we didn't have sponsorships of that facility, all of those, that burden to make that 70% up would come from user fees. And we have user fees now. They are, not too high, but they're high enough. So the sponsorships have offset those so that we can make it available to our community and to our users. So this kind of shows there's 3 different levels of sponsorship that we are talking about, and this is what Chair Peckham alluded to earlier, is that the level 1 would be those really big sponsors, kind of like the sports complex, that if we were going to, try to seek sponsorship for an entire facility that we're going to give naming rights to for a number of years. Let's say one of the pools or something like that. That it would be for 5 years or more and generate $200,000 or more, because if you do a large facility like that, you're asking for a significant contribution per year that you can count on for revenue. This would be something that would come to the City Council and our Parks Commission for approval. It would be something the staff would work with initially and then bring for final approval to those bodies, because it's a significant. So this is where our sports complex would fall in the future. That one right now we're working on is a 5-year agreement with a renewal of another 5 years. So essentially it's a 10-year agreement, and it's going to generate close to $400,000, just under $400,000 over 10 years. So that's a significant, partnership that the county is entering into, and it really matters who we partner with and what that image of that facility or that entity is, along with our entity. So that's level 1. Level 2 would be something that may come to you as a City Council and Parks Commission, but may also be something that I can work on at a department level. It would be for up to 5 years, so less than 5 years, and less than that $200,000. So it may be like a shelter sponsorship for 3 years. Let's say it was $40,000 a year for 3 years. That's $120,000. That's something that I could work on. Most likely, I would bring it to you to let you know, because those things are significant and they're great to have those partnerships. But it's a short-term agreement for a set amount of money. And that's where I'm kind of, that's where we think, like at the sports complex, for instance, and I use this because that's the one area we really use sponsorships is the level 1 is the entire park name. Level 2 is we still go out and we sell the sponsorship for all the other 14 fields that are out there individually. This is something that staff would be able to do in-house, along as we follow this criteria that we match up with, sponsors that align with our mission and vision and goals. And then level 3 is on the smaller level. So this is where, like Mark, for instance, as our recreation superintendent, could seek sponsors for special events. $1,000 to put on a free swim day, or stuff like that, that we can do at the staff level, that they would work within our department on. And they would be very, very short term, maybe event specific, small amount of money for very short amount of time. So those are the 3 we broke it down. And then, we talk about public access. We would make this open to everybody, but it also says in here that we don't have to approve every sponsorship. Just because you want to sponsor with us, you have to also align with what we are all about. And then we talk about kind of the same thing as in the naming rights policy. There's certain things that we, will not allow as sponsorship because of the images they portray or the services they might be involved with, or just that they really don't align with what we're doing. The number 1 is one that I just wanted to touch on, because although it says, alcoholic beverages and establishments that are licensed to sell, such as bars, would not be a sponsor. However, if we had like an adult softball tournament or an adult kickball tournament, where it's solely just to adults, that could be potential that we could align with that sponsor if they still align with our vision and they're a good, outstanding or a good company in the community and they support the community. but they're more adult related and they're not, we wouldn't do it for a children's event. So we did put that in there. We could eliminate that, but I think that does fit for some of the things that we do. And then we talk about, where the sponsorships could be located, how we could get the message out, what options we have. There's always different options coming about. Every year there's new ways of getting the word out and portraying these sponsorships, but that would all be within a sponsorship agreement, which we already have samples of because we do this for the sports complex. So it would be something that we would enter into for at least the level 2 and level 3 sponsors. I'm sorry, the level 1 and the level 2 sponsors. Level 3 sponsors, if they're a one-time event, stuff like that, we do not typically have sponsorship agreements. And then I talk about the sponsorship agreements and then the appeal process. There is always an appeal process in there that if we, deny a sponsorship and they think that they really want to be a part of our organization or our event or a facility, they have the ability to appeal it all the way up to the city council on the city side. So that is what I'm recommending as a sponsorship policy or taking comment on as to where you think this could be changed or what's missed.
Committee, have any thoughts on this one? Look good? Motion to approve? Anybody? Alder Larson moved to approve. Do you have a second? I'm going to give one to Ms. Watson there. That's good.
Yes.
Very good. All those in favor say aye.
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 Very good.
Aye.
Heard all four. Very good.
Thank you.
We have discussion and possible action regarding further testing at Riverside Park. It was added a little late, but we've got it. And what I had hoped was, and I'm always hoping for us to be 3 steps down the road on this thing. What I had hoped was that the DNR would say, okay, here's what you have to do, X, Y, and Z, go for it. But that didn't happen. So they're calling for additional testing at 3 sites that were kind of generally described in the park. And so in preparation for this meeting, I wrote to Matt Thompson, the hydrogeologist that we're working with at the DNR, and I asked him if he had any handle on how many tests will be needed to fill in the blanks to identify the area that may need some action. And I asked him if REI, the engineering company that's acting as our environmental consultant, would have to draw up a proposal and then get, their approval of that plan and then execute it, or, how can this work? And he responded that he didn't know how many borings would be required to define the extent of contamination. And he said that the REI can begin testing without departmental approval of the scope of work. And REI can request Department of the Review, that the DNR review their work plan to ensure it meets their expectations, but it's not required. So probably going to come down to if REI is confident that they have a handle on what needs to happen there, they can go for it. And if they want to be darn sure and maybe wrap it up with this round of tests, they would run it past the DNR. But any thoughts, Ms. Polly, or?
No, the only thing was to add as Mr. Lindman had sent the email out, I think this morning, right, or over the weekend, that he was working with REI to figure out when they could mark or put that plan together.
Yeah. So it's in the works. Any thoughts, comments? It's kind of informational. Alder Killian?
Yes, just on the kind of nature of updates and information. I mean, this, I think our last update may have been at the beginning of February, and it had said that the DNR may possibly require additional sampling, as it apparently has now. But, and I think this doesn't just relate to the Parks Department, it's also Public Works, so that may, in terms of information sharing, I mean, we may have some gaps here and there, but, this, I think, was just a significant update in terms of the DNR now is requiring additional sampling from the city. Would there be a way, I mean, I think our committee's done a pretty good job of this in the past, just to make sure that we are getting monthly updates from Public Works / engineering on this. This one seems to have kind of fallen through the cracks. And, on Cleveland Avenue, I had recently reviewed some records there. I think there had been some problems internally with information sharing with the public. And, often with public records, it's really the people's information and the government simply holding on to it for them. So I guess just moving forward, can we make sure that we are getting updates when the DNR is sending communications to Public Works? And what would be the best way to ensure that we are getting those updates?
I'm not certain. I haven't been in this exact situation before, but I imagine that you could make a motion that this committee ask that we be, whenever there are significant communications, that we be informed. My guess is that Mr. Lindman looked at this and said, okay, yeah, here we go, and didn't think it was enough of a significance to, wave a flag. But I don't know if we could define what we want, or, I'm not sure how that would go.
May I
Yes, sir. Go
respond
ahead.
to that,
Sure.
Alder Peckham? When you look at this is on the DNR. It's called their BRTS, BRRTS page, and it looks like for this particular site, we're looking at only a handful of documents or records on there. So I think one thing that may be helpful is really anytime there's a significant communication exchange with regulators, or when the Public Works or Engineering Department is submitting something like a site investigation report, for example, that, if they do that, say, in February, then at our March meeting, we get updates that has occurred. And this site, maybe unlike others, looks to have a pretty limited exchange of that type of information. So it looks like that may be manageable, but maybe just on communications or records that are exchanged with the DNR, that our committee is updated at the next Parks Committee meeting. That would be my suggestion on that. Thank you.
That sounds reasonable, and I think what we could do is ask Mr. Lindman, either when I email the members of the committee to solicit items for the agenda, what I could do is add Mr. Lindman to that, and I think it's a good idea to, rather than have him share, if he gets one a week, 3 weeks in a row, rather than have him send those out, is to have a regular spot in our agenda packet where if there's anything worth sharing or of note, that he provide it then. So I think I can just handle that. Alder Larson.
My question is to Alder Killian, are you making that a motion?
Well, let me, may I respond to that, Mr. Chair?
You certainly can, yes.
Okay, would it be acceptable? Because in this case, there are really limited records. So I think if we just said, hey, moving forward, instead of just even getting I would really value a summary from Mr. Lindman, but in addition to that, I'd like to get the records and communications because there really aren't many on this. And what that does too is I'm going to get questions from residents and constituents, and it would be easier for me rather than kind of playing some sort of middleman to have that information. So may I make a motion that moving forward, we get a summary from Mr. Lindman and then just communications or records exchanged with the DNR. And, that would be the motion there.
Second.
Okay, very good. Have you got the motion, Ms. Polly, or whoever's going to do this?
Yeah, we got it recorded in a couple spots, so we'll make sure we get it correct.
Okay. Any discussion on so you would, we don't need to approve the testing or the report from the DNR. This is just a motion coming off of that item. And it was to request for the Park and Rec Committee a summary of action. Do you want it to be anything in the community on Parks property, or you want to be run Riverside Park?
I would just, in this case, Riverside Park, Mr. Chair. And, if in the future it would turn into be, we just get this, this unexpected downpour of records where, we've got 100 a month, we could always revise this, but I think it's going to be really limited. So at this point, I would do with the communications and records and for Riverside Park.
Very good. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ms. Watson, are you thumbs up? Very good. You got this sign. Thank you. We have a number of educational items, including swimming pool opening information, but I can turn this section over to Ms. Polly.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So going to kind of our educational items, just a number of park updates which we usually provide you, is we are busy working to get our parks cleaned up, our roads open, our roads and parking lots swept, some boulevard sweeping because the sand has gone up, onto places we mow and where we have plantings, so we're trying to get those cleaned up. We are in the process of opening restrooms. Please note, though, too, we're putting out an informational press release on this, too, is that it is still just April 5th. It's really early yet, and we've had snow at this time of year in other years, so we're being careful as we turn on all the water things that we don't have, a freeze again coming, which we very well could, that could burst pipes. So we are doing it in a manner that we are trying to get everything open, knowing that it's, 70 degrees or more outside today and people are using the parks. So also with that is we will be trying to, once we have them open, we are working on that cleaning schedule. Our seasonal staff does not come on to work for us until mid to late May. So we are doing this with full-time staff in conjunction with trying to do everything else of getting the sports fields up and running, getting the parks open. So we're working really hard to do that. We know that people demand it. We just don't have the staffing as we do when we have all the seasonal employees on. So working on that. We've had some issues with dumping in our parks over the last couple of months. It seems as soon as it got warm, every city park and county park that had a dumpster in it got full. So we have actually begun our garbage removal contract early. They're in the process of doing it regularly now, as they normally would. We are reporting any illegal dumping that we are finding as well. I know on the county side, some of the times the deputies will actually go through the garbage to find any mail, and then they will issue a citation for that illegal dumping. I'm not sure if the city PD does the same, but we do report those. In some cases, we do have the ability, well, in many cases, we have security cameras set up, like River Life has security cameras around there. The Bull Falls gazebo has a security camera on it. We are working to upgrade or to add cameras throughout our system. We do have a camera on JoJo's Jungle. We also sometimes can put up temporary cameras. We have like more of a a game cam that we can put up to try to help. We've had some issues at Riverside Park, which is why we put some more information in here on there with damage to the grass area with somebody doing donuts. We have had issues there in the past, so we have tried signage, we tried a fake camera, we have tried other cameras. 3M has cameras on, so we are continuing to work with PD on that. They're doing some extra patrol there as well. We think we may have, we don't know for certain, but we think we may have gotten the group that did the donuts because we also caught them on very clearly on camera at Marathon Park doing the same thing. We haven't put those two together to know for sure if they're the exact same people, or haven't talked to the PD yet about that, but we are on it, trying to do as much as we can with the parks. Tennis and pickleball nets are going up. Pickleball courts were very busy today. We are in the process of installing the playground at Schofield Park, which has waited for one for quite a while. There are a couple of pieces that are missing, so we're working with the company on where those might be, but we'll get that in. And then we continue with working on the ADA study the city did and getting some of those items corrected. And general operations, we still put in snow removal in case it snows. We're hoping that if we keep it in here, it won't snow, and that will jinx it. The tree removals, and then, like I said, we're starting with events and more shelter reservations, restroom maintenance. So that's the park update I have.
Thank you, Ms. Polly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Want to go to pool staffing?
Yes, pool staffing. So I don't have a lot to report right now on the pools. We had brought to you in January, actually it was December now that I looked back, kind of our COVID plan for reopening. Mark just started, as he mentioned earlier. He's in the process of staffing the pools. That's our number one, and making sure we can get enough staff for the 3 pools. And then as we get closer to this summer, we will look at that operation plan. But the plan is right now that we are opening our pools as well as our recreation programs as if it were a normal summer. There may be some guidelines that we set in place as far as operational changes that we do based on CDC and Health Department guidelines, but we are moving forward with a kind of business as usual at this time, and don't see really any changes or reasons why that would change as we move on.
Bird City?
Once again, the city has renewed a Bird City USA, so they received the 5 flyer status. The Bird Club has asked that this the resolution be put in your packet, so it should be in your packet. You'll also see this will be coming to the city council, I believe in May, where the mayor's asked to read a proclamation and a resolution for that go along with this, the Bird Club being able to get this status for the city. It's kind of requirements they have to do every year, so you'll see more on this in May.
And there is quite a bit of work that goes into, I don't know what we have to do to be a tree city, but for the bird city, they do really want to push to have new things, to be able to tell the committee that hands these out, makes these designations. They really try to have new services or programs or legislation that, something the city has done to help bird habitat or something like that. So it's a lot of work, and I'm sure that we will thank the Bird Club when they come before the city council. Dog Park Special Committee, we're going to open it next week, and it's going to be all good?
No. We're going to talk today at our meeting about opening. Right now, the grass, we're still waiting. Like I said, it's April 5th, so the frost just went out. The grass is starting to grow, but we need to give it a little bit of time to make sure it's established. There's some brown out there. We need those that, grass is going to start greening up here shortly. So we will keep an eye out of when we can, have a soft opening of it, but it's most likely that more the grand opening would be more to that mid to late May, and then it would be open regularly. They canceled their open houses that they had because the first ones in February were way too cold, and of course March 6th came and we didn't have enough snow to protect that grass. So a lot of change in that 4-week time. The committee did approve the Two Hearts Dog Park entrance sign and the financial contribution. The sign has been ordered, it's in the works. We're hoping to get it within the next 4 weeks, so that is also a factor of the grand openings. We'd like that in place before we open it. For that naming rights, in this case, they had also a contribution of $17,500, and to date, we've gotten $9,400, and they're working on a raffle that they're going to have, and some other fundraising activities, but the committee did make a motion that, and a stipulation that the entire remaining amount must be paid by the time the grand opening happens, which is when we talked about that mid to late May. So I know Mr. Neal's not on, but Ms. Watson, did you have anything you think I forgot from our last meeting? So, we meet today again, and one of the things that they will be asked to decide is if we want to move forward with a shelter and get that ordered, and a little open-air shelter that was planned out there, as well as we got a quote for irrigation. I think, talking about the opening dates, and then agility equipment. The committee was asked to rank different equipment, and so we're going to talk about, we do have a balance, pretty good balance of a little over $45,000 still left in an account for more of these amenities, so they will talk about what they want to complete there.
Someday we'll get that thing going.
Soon, very soon.
Any questions or comments on the dog park situation? I hope we have a quorum for that meeting later. Okay, that's just informational. Future agenda items, we have the Riverside Park testing. If we have anything on that, is there anything that the committee members knows of now that would be desirable for that one? You'll have another chance before that meeting. Thank you. And we're going to meet again Monday, May 3 at 4:30 p.m. Any announcements, questions, comments before we wrap up? Do I see a hand going up? Motion to adjourn? Larson and Watson to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. Appreciate your time and attention.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Aye.